Hi, good evening, everyone. This is the Community Board 3 Health Seniors, Human Services, Youth Education and Human Rights Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, and we are going to get started. We have a pretty long agenda item. We have many agenda items tonight. But before we start, Larry will take the roll call and approval of the minutes.
All right. Mei Lee,
Here.
Larry Finn, present. Eric Diaz, Tahisha Fields, absent. Naima Fafana, absent. Deborah Glass, Anna Picard, Robin Oliveres, Ramya Rao, Indrani Rivera, Arnett Scott, Carmen Perez.
I emailed out the minutes to all the committee members. Are there any changes for the minutes? Okay, so seeing none, the minutes are deemed approved. All right, so the first agenda item will be about support for legislation to require discount for seniors participating in the bike share program. We will have members of City Council Member Marte's office to speak with us. So you can start and start by introducing yourself and then, talk to us about the proposal. Yes, you do.
Hello. It's okay. That sounds good. So my name is Simon. I'm from Councilmember Marte's office, and I'm joined by my colleague Max. So the idea actually came to us when I went to a community board meeting a while ago, and I believe the advocates were referring to a support.
You have to. Okay, wait.
Okay. So it was originally support for students to have a city bike discount, and then I remember someone on the board in the audience asked the question, well, what about a discount for senior citizens? So we kind of discussed it internally.
Are there any questions? If you have questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay, so we're going to have see the resolution on the screen. And I think it needs to be read aloud. Oh,
Read it aloud. Whereas there is demand from senior residents in Community District 3 to use the bike share program, and whereas 24% of the seniors in Community District 3 are living below the poverty line, and some senior groups, such as Senior Advocacy Leadership Team, have voiced the need for discounted rates for seniors. And whereas Community Board 3 encourages the use of bikes as a means of transportation for health and for environmental sustainability, and whereas the City Council is proposing a local law to create bike share program discounts for senior residents, so therefore be it resolved that Community Board 3 supports Intro 1288 and the creation of a senior discount for the city's bike share program.
There's someone on the Zoom has a question?
Katie, you had a question, you had your hand raised. MA, can you let us know what your question is? Oh, she's like, the sound is not working. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, she said it's working now. Okay. Thank you, MA.
I actually had a question. I think, I mean, it's very, you know, I'm sure it will be popular. But others might ask. So there is such a discount for Nitro residents that's actually in effect. And there was legislation to have it. Or how does it work? Like, okay, so the idea would Lyft and DOT or whoever the provider is and DOT would negotiate something. Okay. Robin?
For the a lot of them are not tech savvy. How are they supposed to get bikes and do all that with the technology that we have? Yeah, just in case they don't give that out anymore. So maybe it would have to be something that you can, yeah. I'm a 78. If I tell my mom, Canada, she's gonna be like, oh, what? No, I'm leaving. So, you know, just to think about her struggles with computer and all of that, I do everything. So for her, the key fob will be easier. I know that they give them for maybe like that. Just to think about, yeah.
Anybody else? Tanisha?
So, when it comes to the seniors and making sure, are you guys gonna have like information sessions for them? Just going off of the conversation, the comment of being tech savvy. I know there's a lot of pushback from my parents that are in their mid to late 70s that they have to transfer their senior Metro card to Omni, and that's making them a little upset because they don't know how to work the Omni machine and no one's really giving them information. They just sent them a letter. So is there anything, when you guys do roll this out, a plan of like a couple of information sessions for them so they don't feel like you gave them this program, but then there's no way that they can use it, and then you'll have like feedback that it wasn't worth the time that you're putting all the effort in?
A question? Okay. Okay, so there are no other questions? Yes, Eric?
This gets passed, it applies citywide.
Okay, so since there are no other questions, we will vote on this now. Larry?
We will now do a vote on the resolution. May Lee. Larry Finn, yes. Eric Diaz. Tahisha Fields. Naima Fafana. Deborah Glass.
Yes.
Anna Kakar.
Yeah.
Kevin Oliveras. Ramiro Rao absent. Andrani Rivera.
Yes.
Arnett Scott absent. Carmen Perez absent.
So it passes. And it'll be voted on, it'll go on to the full board in late July.
Sure, that you knew, we copied you in a letter to the mayor about needing a school. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Okay. I don't think that is going to be part of the discussion with Carrie at all. It actually came out of an well, we've been advocating for a very long time, but an IBO workshop, I think it was 2 months ago, actually gave us a lot more facts and really stressed the need for the school. So I just want to make sure. So is that going to, I don't know if we're going to be discussing that at all in the next presentation. No, the school. Okay, so we're not going to be discussing it more tonight. I just wanted to make sure you're aware. A copy of his is with the letter.
Right, so we're going to move on to the second agenda item, which is a presentation from the Independent Budget Office about schools and how to find out, a lot of information about how they're funded.
Yeah, hi.
And so you please introduce yourself and who you are, and you can start, and we will show the slideshow while you're talking.
Like flashing, okay. Does this work? They're both flashing. Maybe I'll hold it like this. This is so silly. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna use this microphone. It's a little silly, but it works. Whenever you want me to get started, I can. Yep. Can you guys hear me? Okay, sorry, this is really silly, but my name is Hannah. I'm here from the Independent Budget Office. I think maybe we have interacted before. Are you on CC1? Yeah, so we are, I'll talk a little bit throughout this presentation about what we do. I'll show you a couple of our reports, and I specifically try to pull your district information for these reports. And then I'll also go over a little school budget workshop with you all. Throughout this workshop, I also put QR codes on the presentation, so you can follow along and look up your own school while I'm going through the presentation, to make sure that you are just understanding the information. And it's meant to be interactive too. So if at any point you want to stop and ask me a question, please feel free to jump in whenever. It's fine.
Before we start, so just about the question asking, we would prefer that you give the entire presentation. Can you give the entire presentation first and then we go back for questions?
Whatever works best for you.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. She's going to give the entire talk first, save your questions. And then, if you have a question, as usual, you'll raise your hand. I will call on you, and don't worry, I will call on everyone who has a question, and then Hannah will answer your question.
Okay, just a little bit about me before coming to the Independent Budget Office. Yep. Is that better? Okay. A little bit about me. Before coming to IBO, I was a middle school teacher, so I worked in education in New York City. And to give you a little overview of IBO and what we do, we kind of work in two groups. We do independent analysis of the city budget. So every time the mayor releases a budget plan, we do a response to that. We talk about where the money is going, and we track spending over the year. We also exist as an educational budget office, and so we take questions from the public. Actually, on our website, if you have any budget-related questions, you will find a form where you can submit your questions, and we try to get back to people within a week or two. So hopefully we can be a resource to you as well. Slide. So I talked a little bit about our mandated reports, but basically we're tracking to make sure tracking the changes throughout the different budget plans that the mayor submits. And then we also do reports throughout the year. I'll show you a couple examples of our reports. But just to highlight a couple, we did a report this year on changes in our city staffing level. So we looked at head count for different agencies. We also did a district level report of pre-K enrollments in New York City. We did this at a district level because, some districts have really high enrollment for pre-K and pre-K, while some districts enrollment is demand is not as high. And we're hoping that city council as well as city planners will use this information to strategically open early childcare centers where most necessary. But if you take a look at that report, we do have information at the district level if you are interested. And then lastly, one of the reports I think you mentioned previously was looking at the age of school buildings, how accessible they are. Spoiler alert, most schools in New York City are not accessible to students with disabilities. We also found that 20% of school buildings don't have access to air conditioning, which is not great given the heat wave. And then lastly, we also looked at the space constraints in schools, which is really relevant given the class size reduction mandate that we're going to have to meet in 2028. So you can skip ahead to the next slide. So just to give you a preview of one of our reports, I pulled this information on school district 1 and 2 for you. We have this information available at the district level, but also the school level. So if you're interested in how your school stacked up in terms of accessibility, you can find this information in our report. The red and the yellow show that your school is either accessible by federal standards or only partially accessible. So as you can see here, not doing so great. And that is also due to the fact that a lot of schools in New York City are really old. We found that the average age of New York City schools is over 75 years old, contributes to the expense that the DOE has to spend to maintain buildings, as well as build new units to make them more accessible, like elevators or any other things that would make them more in compliance with federal law. I also pulled information for District 1 and 2 on utilization. So if you want to look at the report, you can see which schools in your district are overutilized. This is also really important again when principals apply for class reduction funding. And so District 1 is doing okay, but as you'll see, District 2 has a significant amount of buildings that are considered overutilized. And so they might be candidates for that class size reduction funding if your principal does apply for those funds. Okay. Also, just to go over the budget timeline really quickly, I know you all are pretty engaged in the budget, so this might be a review for you. But just to point out some key dates, we have the preliminary budget plan released in January. This is like the mayor's first round of the budget proposal. Between then and April, the mayor, city council, and community boards will discuss changes and updates to the budget. So that those changes, as well as changes at the state level, will be reflected in the executive budget. But a really key date to look out for people that are interested in education is May and June. This is the time where the DOE will release funds for school through a process called the school allocation memorandums. And your principal, once they receive this funds, can begin planning for the next school year. And so if you're really interested in your school, like hiring a new guidance counselor or spending for a certain language teacher, this might be a good time to have those discussions with your principals because it's kind of locked into the school budget. So we always encourage people that are interested in having those discussions with their principals to start talking to them in June when they do get funding for the new school year. Okay. But we're getting to the kind of interactive part of the workshop now. You can go to the slide. The goal of this activity is for you all to learn how your school receives funding from New York City Public Schools, as well as what that funding supports. So a couple documents that we'll be going over are how to read your school's budget at a glance, a helpful high-level tool that the Department of Education released last year. We'll also talk about what a school allocation memorandum is, where your school's money is coming from. Is it coming from the federal government, which I know people are concerned about now? Is it coming from the state government, coming from the city? All that information is broken down for you in these documents. We'll go over a couple of the key documents. So just a little bit of context to ground us. For most schools in New York City, the majority of funding comes from a stream called Fair Student Funding. Has anyone heard about this stream of funding before? Okay, so Fair Student Funding is how, again, schools get money. The Department of Education says that most schools get around 2/3 of their money from the funding stream. And Fair Student Funding is a per pupil model of funding. So that means if a child switches schools, the money from the stream will follow them to their next school. And this is why enrollment is so important for schools. So if you see a decline in enrollment, for example, as we'll see in one of the schools I'm giving as an example, they will lose funds because they have less students that are enrolling, and so they'll lose less of receive less of those from the Department of Education. Another important thing to know about Fair Student Funding is that students with disabilities, students that are English language learners, and students with academic need, as well as students in temporary housing, receive extra funds from this funding stream. And so it's not just about enrollment, it's also about student need, the type of students a school is enrolling. Perfect, thank you. So some other key terms to know: school allocation memorandum. These are documents that the Department of Education gives to your principal. And these documents tell your principal how they can use the money. And this is the type of document that we're going to be going over in today's workshop. So there's a lot of documents and I don't want to overwhelm you. So I just pulled kind of the very important ones that schools receive most of the funding through. But last year there was around 88 of these documents. They're 10 pages long. This year, 5 have been released, but we do expect it to get to 80 as well. Another important term really quickly to flag is, you might see when you're looking for your school budget, a term called PL. That means that that student funding is coming from the city because that stands for tax levy. So if that comes up, you'll know what to look for. But now if you want to quickly scan the QR code on the screen and follow along, no pressure. But this is the first document that we're gonna be looking at. I also put in a hyperlink on the, if you want to pull it up on your computer. But I'm gonna be using PS 188 or the Island School as an example, just because I used to work there. But this is a really good high level look at your school and how they're receiving money. So some really important things to note is that this school, for example, gets around $28,000 per pupil. I also like to look at the demographic down here, so it'll tell you, so it's really hard for me to see. So, for example, how many students in this school have economic needs. This school in particular has around above 95% of students that qualify for the economics need index. And I like it because it also compares it to the city average of 73. So 95 to 73, you can see that the school has significantly more students that have those type of needs as does the citywide average. So this is again a really great resource if you are advocating for specific resources in your school, because you can talk to the DOE and say like my students needs that the average school in New York City. And so it's a really great like high level advocacy resource as well. This is when we're going to be going over school allocation memorandums. So there's another QR code here if you want to follow along, but I also am going to be putting examples on the screen. But again, this is that bevy of documents that principals receive that tell them how much money they're getting through each stream and what that money can be used for. So I'll give people a second to pull it up if they want to, but go to the next slide. So the first school allocation memorandum that I'm going to be looking at is their student funding. Again, this is the largest portion of school funding, and it gives principals a lot of flexibility in how they can spend it. It provides base funding for all students and then additional funds for students with greater needs. So those needs, you can find the whole list on the New York City Department of Education website, but those needs include students that are English language learners, students with disabilities, or students that qualify for academic need. And then they also added additional supports for students in temporary housing last year. And that is because, New York City did see an influx of type of students, particularly in the last couple of years. So besides an example, PS 188 through this funding stream received around $300,500,000. And this money is usually used by your principal for teacher hiring. The next school allocation memorandum is called Title I. This has a program that might have been in the news a lot. You might have heard of it in the past, but this is a federal program. So it's coming from the Federal Department of Education, and it's meant to support schools with a high number of low income students. So your school might get from this funding stream if they have a high number of students in temporary housing or students that are low income. But the only thing that kind of restricts principal funding from this stream is that it has to be used for programs that help low income students. So your principal can't just go and hire like a Spanish teacher with these funds. They have to be using it for programs that typically support these students. So again, I just put the amounts that PS 188 received through this funding stream. Again, there was a significant amount of students that were low income or students in temporary housing in that school. And so they were receiving a good amount of money from this funding stream. Just to give you the per pupil breakdown, schools on a per pupil basis receive around $1,000 per student to support the type of students. And this amount changes year to year as well. Okay, this is one that people have been asking us a lot about. This is the class size reduction planning school allocation memorandum. This was added actually just this year. And so last year, principals were requested by the Department of Education to apply to get funding for classroom reduction. Around 800 schools around New York City applied and 750 schools were awarded the funds. So this might be a good one to talk to your principal about too. Just ask them, did you apply for this funding? If not, are you gonna apply for it next year? Because it's supposed to be used for class size reduction purposes. So this is just one that we've been asked about a lot. Might have questions about as well. But yeah, maybe just look through your school budget too and see if your school qualified for this type of funding. Lastly, I have counseling initiatives. I chose this one because I was reading your district needs statement. And I know that, one of the big requests was that your schools, there's more guidance counselors. Unfortunately, New York City, does have a lack of guidance counselors throughout schools. A lot of times guidance counselors are being used for mandated services, but they're not really available for things like mental health supports. So the Department of Education also did add a new school allocation memorandum that is specific for guidance counselors or social workers. Unfortunately, I'm not really sure exactly why, but PS 188 was not a school that qualified for this type of funding. But you can also find the full list of schools online that did qualify for this funding. And that includes school social workers in high need schools, guidance counselors in high need schools, and then also people that were just like mental health responder guidance counselors. And then you'll also see the amount that we're getting through the school allocation memorandum. Because this is pretty new, the Department of Education hasn't invested a lot into this allocation memorandum yet. But this is something that you could potentially bring up to DOE if you're interested in more guidance counselors around the city. You could potentially contact the panel for education policy that determines school allocation memorandums or the Department of Education to advocate for funding for this specific thing, since that's something your community is interested in. I think that was it. Yeah, so again, any questions? And I know it's really dense, so if any of you want to like meet one-on-one and go over it, you can reach out to me later or email our office too.
Questions? So you had a question, Susan? Okay, any questions from the committee? Tahisha and then Susan.
It's kind of like a two-parter in a way. My first question was about the allocation of the money for the resizing of the classrooms. And I see that, I know the money is going towards hiring more teachers. But hiring the teachers, do they also have the capacity for the classrooms to be split? Because their classes are over capacity.
Yeah, so when I looked at the document, it was specifically only for hiring teachers,
Okay.
but schools are supposed to also get separate funding for like space constraints.
Mhm.
But this doesn't cover the expense budget. So if you're talking about like a capital cost, like building a new school building or building a new classroom, that would be this budget.
And my other question, being a person that does mental health counseling in middle schools and high schools, do you know why the restriction is for that? Because it does boost the rates of graduation and conflict resolutions for the social workers and the guidance counselors. Do you see if there might be an increase for having more mental health counselors and social workers in the school system, or at least if they don't have one, at least have one in the school?
Yeah, I would say definitely like the Department of Education adding this new funding stream for guidance counselors is a really promising sign. Again, they were really selective and received it this year. So when I looked at Island School, for example, they weren't receiving money for a guidance counselor. But I think it's definitely counselors and mental health is something your community really cares about. There should be like a funding stream that maybe you bring up to the DOE to ask for more funding. But I also think there are a lot of constraints now because the DOE have to hire around 20,000 new teachers for class size reduction. So they might be prioritizing that, well.
Will get a lot of funds due to the fact that they have kids with disabilities in their building, so they cater to all the kids in the community with disability. Section from District 75, all of the students go there, so maybe that's why that was a school that was picked due to the fact of that. Some schools are sharing counselors. So we, not only there, everywhere.
Yeah, they also said they were specifically prioritizing schools for this funding stream that didn't have a guidance counselor last year. So it's possible 188 already had one, and so that's good too.
First of all, I just wanted to mention, we have, I don't know if our superintendent is on, the Zoom, but we certainly have, pardon? Christine, I wanted to mention from District 1 or from the district office, they're also on the call. And will be talking to us about these kinds of things afterward. Isn't, yeah, just 188, isn't that like 50% temporary housing, Robin? PS 188, isn't that like 50% temporary housing? Okay, I know usually it is, and I just wanted to mention that it would be crazy not to have guidance counselors there. Good. Oh, good. Okay, thank you. So I think in the beginning, you mentioned that as far as seats, that District 1 was in good shape, but District 2 is not so much in good shape.
Yeah, if you wanna go back to that.
No,
slide.
well, if I could just sort of beside that, I'm sorry, I have to bring up your other report about this. So I don't think we can talk about seats in District 1. I know school construction does, but when you have schools that are from 1896 and 1900 and 1904, they're not fit, the seats aren't fit to be used. When you have 50% of the schools not being fully air conditioned in 100-degree weather, you can't talk about those seats. And we do have families in District 1 competing for seats at the Nest School because they're not going to the other schools. The other seats are staying empty. And, you don't know which is the chicken or the egg, whether people aren't going to the schools because they're really not fit. I believe we have high school students in schools that were built for elementary schools. So I think it's really, it just doesn't, it isn't productive for us to talk about seats, even though there's empty seats. I don't think those are seats that can be used, and I don't think it's productive for us to talk about that. It's kind of feeding into the city's algorithms that don't work in very old New York.
No, that's a good point. I think that's why you have to look at it from all these different angles. Like even if a school qualifies as being underutilized, for example, if you look at our school level data, it might show that that building might not be full because students might not want to go to it because the school is 80 years old, doesn't have AC, accessible. So it's good to look at it in a holistic view rather than how many seats are in the building, like you're saying.
Thank you.
Steen, who is on the Zoom, you had your hand raised. Did you have a question?
It wasn't so much a question. I just wanted to speak to Susan's point around PSMS 188. So that is accurate. PSMS 188 does have about 50% of students who are in transitional housing. But to the earlier point made during the budget presentation, they are a community school. They do have a full-time support staff with guidance counselors, social workers, school psychologists, and supports from their community partner. So while we will always be open to additional supports and funding for guidance counselors, I do understand that that's how the decision was made around schools that did not have counseling services or full-time counseling services.
Nanuma?
So much for your presentation. I just wanted to ask about the great need for the development of the infrastructure in the schools. How would you go about fixing the infrastructures? Are there any plans to reconstruct schools or make sure that it's safe for students to sit in their buildings and comfortable for them?
Yeah, we are just kind of like a agency that checks and analyzes the budget. So we don't have any budgetary, we're kind of more of an educational resource. We don't have any decision-making power, but we do have an analyst on our education team that works really closely with the school construction authority. So if you're interested, I can put you in touch with her. She does a lot of work with them and might have, if you have a specific question about infrastructure projects, or how to get it done or how to get the funding, she might be able to point you in the right direction. But I would say the school construction authority is probably the place to look for any longer term projects. Yeah,
I would like that information, yeah.
Or to put you in touch with her.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else with questions? See any questions? Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
For the presentation. And if we have any, a lot of information, and I think it'll be useful to us, as we go down the road, and we'll certainly probably be following up with you. Susan, you had something to say?
Really thank you for the two reports that you've given us. They're just tremendously accessible and wonderful information. And absolutely, as you can see, we're using them.
Okay, thank you. So, so now we're going to move on to our next item, which is, we have a speaker from School District 1, Christine. Yeah, we just want to hear about, the needs and everything that's going on with School District 1. So you can start, just introduce yourself and then you can just start.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me with you tonight. My name is Christine Mastillo. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Community School District 1. And on behalf of Superintendent Chan, I want to send her apologies for not being able to be here this evening, but she does extend her thanks for your partnership and your ongoing advocacy. I want to start off with a celebration. So this year, District 1, in collaboration with the Office of Knowledge Management and Real-Time Scaling Labs, was highlighted and celebrated for our work with New York City Reads. So as part of our work with New York City Reads, this documentary, this docuseries that we are part of, highlighted how we built community around the work of New York City Reads. So strengthening our foundational literacy practices, implementing a knowledge building curriculum across our schools, and also expanding family and community partnerships around that curriculum implementation. So having a shared curriculum has allowed us the opportunity to create shared experiences. And as the person who works closely with our family team, I just want to share that we were able to, some of the things we were able to do. We had shared book clubs for families. We were able to send over 400 students and families to Broadway shows connected to units of study. So for example, we had students who went to see Hadestown, they went to see Hamilton. It was a really wonderful experience, and we continue to build the capacity across our schools to grow the work of New York City Reads. So that was a really wonderful event that we had on June 11th, and we're just very proud of that. I know that I was asked to share some needs and concerns. So enrollment is always top of mind on District 1. I've been with District 1 for the past 8 years. In that time, we've done 4 school mergers, and our enrollment has dropped over 2,000 students. So our current enrollment for Community School District 1, that's exclusive of most high schools with the exception of OCA. We have 5,149 students. And so while we have decreased our number of schools and decreased our number of students, we continue to try to grow programs. And so we do have an international baccalaureate program at the School for Global Leaders. This upcoming year, Global Leaders will go from a 6 through 8 to a 6 to 9, eventually expanding through a 6 through 12. So we're excited about that. We have a NEST ASD program that will extend from elementary school through high school. So our elementary program is at PS 19 EBCS. Our middle school program is at University Neighborhood Middle School, and our high school program will be at Global Leaders. We're also launching a Nest Horizons program at the Earth School. And so we continue to try to grow those specialized programs in an effort to increase enrollment and student inclusivity. So that's a piece that's always top of mind. A point that I didn't have here, but I will mention because it was brought up in the previous conversation. The majority of our schools that did apply for class size reduction funding did receive that funding and are in the process of hiring additional teachers, and 2 schools were also approved for additional administrative staff. So that was approved. We have some pending SCA projects that are ongoing. PS 142 is in the middle of a roofing project. I know there were some concerns raised at previous meetings about the timelines of some of these projects. We do have a library project going on at the 64 campus, which includes PS 64, the Earth School, and Tompkins Square Middle School. We are awaiting some bathroom projects at Children's Workshop School. And so the projects at 64 and 361 were funding projects from Carlina Rivera's office. And so we are waiting for those to be completed. 361 also that's Children's Workshop School. We had some concerns last year with a building that was adjacent to their schoolyard began crumbling. It's going to require some demolition. And so Children's Workshop School asked me to share that as an area of concern. They will likely at least temporarily lose a section of their playground. So that's again a project that's on our minds. What we continue to do is we've been fortunate in that we've had several playground projects that have recently been completed. I think our most recent one was at University Neighborhood Middle School, but we want to expand that. And then we have situations like Children's Workshop School where their playground is going to be impacted and possibly damaged. And so we want to continue to make sure that we have outdoor spaces for all of our students. And so next on our list would really be schools like 140 and the School for Global Leaders that are just finishing other construction projects. And so the hope is that we would be able to advocate for improved playground spaces. We also have an ongoing situation that we brought up it with CB3 a while back. We've brought up with different agencies going back to PSMS 188. There is an alleyway or a drive adjacent to the building that is almost perpetually flooded. And so it's sort of been passed around in terms of who's responsible for fixing this issue. Is it NYCHA? Is it DOT? It's not really clear, and that's been passed around, but that's been an ongoing issue because when it floods, it also floods inside the school. So that is something we wanted to raise. And then we continue for to the point about old buildings. We have a lot of auditoriums that are in odd spaces. So at the 63 campus, for example, the auditorium is more in the basement. It is a very, very hot space. It is not air conditioned. It is something that we'd like to address across our school buildings. We've also been, many of our schools have started to get water filters and refillable water stations. That's something that we also look to expand as we keep our students hydrated and drinking healthy water. So I'm happy to, those are some pieces that we wanted to share. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions so far from the committee? Larry and then Nanuma?
Hey, I have a pretty minor question just for bookkeeping. The driveway that you mentioned that's flooded, what's the name of it?
What's the name of that side street?
Yeah.
I would have to, I'm not sure. It's not an actual street. It looks like a parking area / street. It's so PSMS 188 is located on Houston and Avenue D. And so there is it's just like a pathway. I think there's a space that kind of loops around. I would have to see if it has a name.
Okay.
But it's adjacent to the building. If you were walking towards Avenue C, and still on Houston.
And Naima changed her mind. Is there anyone else with a question? Susan?
Are there ever any discussions about buildings being too old to put money into? For instance, PS 63, the auditorium's not only hot, it's not accessible. And, you know, when is it not worthwhile to put money into some of these buildings? Does school construction ever make that part of the decision making?
So not to my knowledge. We meet with district, we actually have an upcoming meeting with district planning in the next couple of weeks. And we do go over some of the needs. We haven't heard from SCA that they will not put money into the building typically. So 140, for example, 140 is an older building, maybe not as old as 63, but it is having a lot of money put into it for physical upgrades. And so that's not something that we've heard, but it is something I understand, especially, you know, some of the smaller classrooms sizes as we look at class size reduction.
Idea, we can sell off one of the buildings, make an awful lot of money, and then build a new school.
It's a great idea, Susan.
Eric.
Good question. The 5,000 number of enrollment, that's for kindergarten through high school. Is that correct?
So it is all the students in District 1 communities. So it is, yes, kindergarten through 1 high school, which is Orchard Collegiate Academy. So I just want to be clear, like so Nest does not fall under Community School District 1. Bard does not fall under Community School District 1. Eastside does not fall under Community School District 1. So those are geographically located in our area, but we are 19 schools.
5,000 is just kindergarten through middle school.
Plus 1 high school, yes.
Plus 1 high. Oh, okay. Plus 1 high school. Okay.
Any other questions? You know, I had a question. It was something that I heard Carrie talk about a couple of months ago. I think it was one of those D1 Plus meetings. She talked about, you know, opening up some programming at PS 20 for the Family Resource Center. And she said, you know, starting like as early as October. But, I was wondering if there's any long-term thinking about that or, or what do you plan to start in August? No, she said August. I'm sorry, she didn't say October. She said as early as August at the time, but it seemed like it might be a pilot for something new. So just wanted to
Can I
hear
answer
about
that,
that.
Christine? Is that okay? So, District 1?
Christine.
Sure. So, as part of several years ago, maybe 8 years ago, as part of our diversity in admissions pilot, there were several. That was a state grant that we received, and there were 3 prongs to that grant. It was one, to focus on diversifying admissions to reduce segregation across our schools. That was the enrollment piece. Another piece was to develop attractive programming. So PS15 was the recipient of that part of the grant and implemented school-wide enrichment programming at the school. And then the third part was the development of a family resource center where families could, because we are a district of choice, they would have the opportunity to learn about school choice, and they wouldn't have to go all the way to 333 7th Avenue, that they'd be able to come, find out about the types of programs we offer across our schools and select a school that would be a good fit. During the pandemic, that obviously we were closed down for a while, that whole room was closed out, and then it wasn't re-established when we returned. And so it wasn't funded. And so we've continued to advocate for funding for that space. And so I think what Carrie was speaking to is looking to work with our community partners to see how we can best utilize that space as a space where families can learn about schools, but also we can have workshops and provide services on site. So this year, we had Greenwich House using some of that space to register, to support registration of students and to support resources that families could have access to. We were assigned just a couple of weeks ago a staff member from the Office of Enrollment to come and support enrollment. And as you know, we have other community partners who, including University Settlement and Henry Street, who we know offer a ton of resources in the neighborhood and also might be able to partner around that space. I don't think that we're necessarily looking like one person would man that space and have the, sort of sole responsibility of running it, but that it would really be a collaborative space to serve the community. But I will also say that we don't have that all fleshed out yet, but that's some of our thinking around it.
Oh, also one more thing. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to give it to us right now, but we're going to be looking at district needs statements. So we'll talk about the schools a lot. So we said last year, we said that there were 1,000 new students from asylum seeker families enrolled into elementary and middle schools and school district 1. So that was 23 to 24. So later you can give us an update about 24 to 25, if it's like still a lot of new students or it's the same in terms of these new immigrant students.
Yeah, so we've actually seen a decline in enrollment of newcomer students as families have moved to more permanent housing or different housing. I think our numbers dropped from 1,000 to about 500-600. So we continue to support families, and we've been working over the spring to support families as some of the Hercs shut down the Roosevelt Hotel and some other sites were in the process of closing. And so that's really impacted not only our enrollment, but also our attendance as students move in and out, move to different neighborhoods, some of them wanting to stay at our schools, some of them taking, time to get settled in new spaces. So we're down a little bit with that, but we still have a population of students that we're supporting.
you. Sit with the questions right now. Thank you for coming to speak with us. You're welcome to stay because I mean, we're going to be discussing, district needs in we're discussing the entire district need, but it will include the school part too.
I will be here. I'll hang on if you need me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next agenda item will be our district needs statement and also budget questions. So we have some revisions to our district needs statement. I guess we can put it up on the screen and look at it section by section and review it and see anything else we need to update or change. Just wait one moment and it will be on the screen. Oh, can people see that? Since the last meeting, we made some additions and updates based on what people looked at. Yeah, but there's been more changes since then. Right, it's a later draft. Actually, it's just from today. Can you Okay, so if everyone is looking at the first paragraph, look at the document that Larry just emailed you. The first section on new immigrants and asylum seekers has been changed. The title is, before it was refugees and asylum seekers, but I changed it to new immigrants and asylum seekers. And then the entire section has been changed. I got this information from talking to folks at the Educational Alliance and Henry Street Settlement. So this is about changes, within the last year. As you remembered in the previous year, we were talking about when they were first, coming here, but things have changed since then. Any questions? Jen?
Just for clarification, we're looking at a document for a proposal or what are we looking at?
So this is the district needs statement. We, at the last meeting, at the last two meetings, last two meetings, we looked at the one from last year. And then we noted where we needed to make additions or changes or updates. This was one of the paragraphs we said we needed to update because last year we said, that's when they were all arriving and, going to, St. Bridget's and, staying in shelters, but a lot has changed since. So that notes what has the changes or developments within the last year. So we're looking at our district needs statement, or we're looking at a draft of it, what we propose to put out for fiscal year 27.
Thank you.
We could, we started. Yeah, we start out, yeah. Right. So there is, okay, what's, okay, why don't you add to it first?
You stated that there are problems with respect to asylum seekers or new immigrants being detained by ICE. I saw in the statement that there's like a need for representation, right? So how long would that take? Like since they're going through all of these struggles, so how long would it take for the in our district needs statement for the district to understand that the need for representation is urgent? Since and how would we urgently solve the problem?
Say that I expect this need to go on for 4 years. So I would use. So this is looking at the year starting that 1 year from now, but because of the it's still expected to be.
So. No, so it was actually the original, from Henry Street, they said there is a pronounced need for, immigration, for legal representation, legal services and in-person representation. So immigrants always have a need for legal services and representation, but the need is even more pronounced now, given the federal policies. And there were many things that immigrants went to immigration court for that were kind of, nothing is ever routine. It was, they would kind of be okay if they had the proper information, but now nobody is okay anymore. And so what you see is, people being detained and even, just like on the street, or, hear these stories. Sometimes they're not in the city, or they're in suburbs of Long Island where, they're just out there, or, a lot, immigration enforcement is out there. So, um, but it's something that's a little more broader because, because of, yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, right.
Please, we need consistency because all these programs last 3 to 6 months and then we have no help for these families. So then it's very difficult for me. Like have to get help from Harlem, lawyers from Harlem in order to help me. Here in the Lower East Side, we don't have um permanent help, right? In Harlem, I have taken, those lawyers help me because I know them. They have helped me take people in housing court and all these things that we don't have here permanently, but all organizations do it temporarily. So I think that in this sense, so that our families can stay here, this is why they go to other sectors because there's more facilities, especially for migrants family in the Bronx, in Washington Heights and Harlem that have all year round help, not only temporary. And I feel like here in the Lower East Side, we do help temporarily. But then the lights go off, everything go out. Look, they closed every hotel that we had or everything. They closed it down. All those families have to go somewhere. So I think it's more consistency. If you're gonna spread out these programs, hopefully spread them out to an extent that we can last longer. Give more support to families so that they don't have to go somewhere else and we can keep families in our district because they don't have to go anywhere because all the support they need is here. I think we should capture. Losing funding. We are losing to some schools. Just as an example, 184. It was a T1 school, I think it is. We had extra money, but because of the income of the parents, now that funding was taken away. Now it's just, mind you, they need it, of course, but because of the income of the parents, and it's not to blame the parents because some of us have 2 jobs, so some of us need to have certain amount of jobs in order to maintain. It's not that we don't want to, so that brings up the income in the schools, the income plus funding, and then we lose a lot of stuff. So 188 was one of the ones that lost their funding, extra funding because of the income went up in their sectors. I don't know what other schools that's happening to, but that is definitely happening.
Christine, did you have a question? Because I think your hand was raised.
Yeah, so less of a question. I heard some of the conversation. And so if there are any questions for me, I can only hear when someone's speaking in the microphone. Otherwise I can't hear anything. So I just wanted to put out there if there are any questions or anything you need me to answer. That's it. And while I'm here, I also wanted to say that the space next to 188 is Lillian Wall Drive. That's the space.
Thank you. That's what Susan guessed, and she was right. Okay, okay, shall we move on to the next section? Oh, well, no changes were made. So we're gonna get we're gonna have to update the thing about the new students from what Christine said, or maybe Christine, you could email it to us.
I can email that, yes.
So the other sections don't have any changes so far? Oh, go back. Students in temporary housing. What's that? There's a little note at the end to ask Carrie something.
You for asylum. Or sorry, housing family.
Can you just?
So if there is a question for me, I didn't hear it.
I was just saying the last sentence there where it talks about the increase in new arrivals, that I'm just saying that, we have to change that because it's no longer a situation. Because it has been cut in half, basically.
Okay, yes, I just saw that question to ask Carrie,
Yeah.
so I didn't know if there was a question coming, but yes.
Do we have any statistics at all where it says, students in temporary housing that have to travel? Do we know how many, because I know, shelters has been closed, but do we know how many of the students in temporary housing live in CB3 and how many have to travel? Is that something the district knows?
It's not something I could provide offhand, but it's
Okay.
information that I can inquire about.
Yeah, because at this point, we have no idea if it's an issue or not an issue, or whether or not
I think she could find out because in the beginning, we know that we lost a lot of students, especially when they closed the shelters. We lost excessive amount of students. When they came in, we got 1,000 thing. So now to give you statistic, I think Christine will definitely.
It sounds like Christine said she could get that.
Yeah, she could definitely get
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
We'll definitely.
So when, so we'll just update that section. How many students, what?
Had how many students? 5,000. What exactly in District 1?
5149.
For what?
Uh,
Right. The increase I was talking about before was the increase of the new immigrant and that has been cut in half.
Okay, so we will move on to the next section about the need for a new school. The information from the IBO's presentation from last, has already been inserted in there and we reviewed it before at the last meeting. So it's about accessibility and air conditioning. However, the rest of it is, kind of from last time. We had a question, concerning technology and testing in the schools, and we were going to ask, Christine, we were going to ask you or Carrie about it. In previous years, there was a need for technology because of all this testing that was going on in the schools, you know, using computers and the internet. And we want to know if that paragraph there is still relevant for this year.
So I do think there's relevance in it. We are moving towards complete computer-based testing. We are in the process of phasing that in, and citywide to address with infrastructure needs, there's a rolling timeline so that everyone's not taking the exam at the exact same time. But in terms of, so a majority of our schools are one-to-one in terms of equipment. But we know also that computers and technology can quickly become outdated, or laptops and iPads and other devices that are shared can be lost, damaged, etc. So I think we are beginning to account for that in school budgets so that we continue to build and maintain that 1-for-1. But I think there's always a need for support because
Talking about our most important unmet needs, it doesn't sound like the technology issue right now is a large unmet need. Support is one thing, but it's not a huge crisis, big unmet need.
agreed.
Okay, so we will take it out. And he's doing it right now. Okay, so the other. No, so the other thing that we said we needed to do was to insert language back into the district needs statement about the location of this new school. Oh, wait, so do you have a question about that or this? Okay, go ahead, Robin. Robin, can you turn on your mic?
I did have a question about the new school. I'm sorry, I'm going through my messages. Oh, so Christine asked me actually today, that the space for the school was transferred to another city agency. Is that true? Not yet. Okay, Christine, not yet.
Okay, so we did connect with SCA following the CEC meeting 2 months ago where Noah had brought it up, right? Because that was our understanding, that space at Essex Crossing, I think it's space on Suffolk Street. We were under the impression that we had, I want to say 10 years, but so when we inquired, the feedback that we received was that the New York City Public Schools time expired. And because there was no seat need for a new school, or additional space with the class size reduction, that space was transferred. So it'd be wonderful if it wasn't, and there was still an opportunity for conversation. But that was the response we received from SEA.
So I just sent Carrie the other day a copy of a letter that we wrote to the mayor, and I know she got it because she asked us to keep including her in the advocacy. So the space was on hold for 5 years, and it expired a few years ago. May and I had been through and discussed this in committee, in touch with HPD the whole time. There was no other development planned. There was and HPD was still sympathetic to our use, so nothing was happening to it. So it remained under HPD. If it's been transferred, we have not, if it's been actually transferred, and I don't see why it would be transferred because it's under HPD. And if they want to build housing there, why would they transfer it? Makes no sense to me. A lot of this, as we stated in, well, I don't know, remember if it's in the letter, but it was quoted in the Gothamist. You know, this has all been done behind closed doors, and not everybody is saying everything. So it is not all clear, but I don't see how it could be transferred when it was with HPD and they're saying they want to build housing, and that's done by HPD. It makes no sense. And they're also talking about putting shovel in the ground within 6 months. I don't see how that's possible. I actually had a conversation with Randy Mastro about this, in which he denied that HPD even knew they had jurisdiction, which was clearly not true because we had been talking to HPD. So I think we need to keep advocating, and it's true that we have empty seats and we're going to have more and more of them if we don't get a new school. We just need to keep advocating, and if not this spot, then where?
Okay, so how shall we put this into the district needs statement? Can we? About the location or the fact that it's been reserved.
So I'm going to
What are the words?
I'm going to say by the time this is relevant, which is a year from July, everything's going to have been changed. So I think other than the fact that at this time, there are not any definite plans, and we don't know what the future holds. That this is an issue that we have to keep advocating. That's about all I think we can say.
So we should say that in this draft, we need to keep advocating for a school at Essex Crossing at 22 Suffolk Street. Yes?
I can put it here because we say abstractly we need a new public school facility. We can just say concretely.
Yeah, well, we don't tweet about
facility
it.
at Essex Crossing.
Something. There would not be a site for seniors and low seniors. The school.
Well, it's housing. Housing, yeah.
They
They didn't say it would be for low-income seniors.
We're not against low income housing. We want all the housing we can get. But what's happening is it's being pitted against the need for the school in this one location. Yes, I'm putting it in context. Yes. And we have to continue our advocating for this new school because of the great need.
Okay, very good. Okay, I just stuck it in there because it probably belongs in another paragraph, but as you recall, Varsity Settlement came to talk to us about after-school program. So that is what he said. You know, there's about pay parity and that, you know, costs have risen, you know, the minimum wage has risen, but their funding has not risen. And it hasn't risen in the last 10 years and they need more funding. So that's the need for after-school programs. And then I just had a question there because he wrote it out for us later and then he said something about the new community. So I will clarify what that, with him.
If I could just add, I mean, so this is something that we've also continued to advocate for, because schools that are unable to provide after school suffer from low enrollment, right? And families don't have access. So we talk about school choice, but families don't have full access to school choice if the school that they want does not provide after school care. So I think when the mayor made the announcement at PS20 a few months back about moving towards universal aftercare. We're interested in seeing what that looks like and how that's rolled out and all of those pieces. But we are definitely in agreement that there is a strong need for universal aftercare for a number of reasons.
Universal after-school programming, universal after-school care. Okay, so is that good? Okay, great.
The school doesn't have after school care. Parents aren't saying that they can't send it to a school that, wow.
Families are more attracted to.
Not the door, that is.
So family, it's difficult for families who have kindergarten, pre-K, and the city of New York does not provide after school for pre-K and Head Start, right? So if you have a child if you have one in first grade and then you have a pre-K, you have to come up pick up your pre-K, so you're gonna have to take out your other one anyways because you're gonna do 2 trips. So the schools the schools that have after school get more enrollment due to the fact that, hey, who works till 2? Nobody. So gets to the fact that the schools are open till 6 and they do have a provider that is providing after school so that at least the parent can go to work. No, that's okay.
Many families are unable to choose school, that their schedule is not allowed.
I mean, the dream is for every school to have after school. Yeah.
Sure. Always be the work schedule. They might be going to school. So I guess if we say work schedule, that means that you're taking out people that do go to school after work. Or just not, just try to make it as vague as possible, because then you're excluding other people that are doing, that need the after school care for their children besides just going to work.
You can just strike it and say their schedule. Yeah.
Make it vague, don't, when you put that in you're pocketing it in, so if we can make it as vague as possible, that might help. I know that might not be possible, but the reason, wait, let me finish what I'm saying. The reason why I'm saying it's more than just work schedule, because there's people that take care of the elderly after that. There's people that have to pick up childcare. So it's a vague, vast things that if you don't have someone that you have to take care of a kid, that might not be, you might be a guardian, it might be a grandparent. So it's very vague. So if we're saying it's just work, it's more than just work for people. So I think we just need to be a little bit more cognizant of that and not pigeonhole we're just thinking about people that go to school and work. There's people that have other things that's outside of that as well. That's all I'm saying.
Okay with that? Okay, Susan.
What about their critical obligations? Because it's critical obligations, and I don't know that, but that sort of covers it.
Work and other critical obligations. Parents who actually, or maybe it's like one parent, like say the mother, for example, who doesn't work. And the reason why she doesn't work is because she can't, because there are these kids and there might be these parents and other things. So that it covers them too. And I mean, yeah, that's perfect.
I don't worry.
Just from last time and all those. There is a change here. Is this the food section? Oh.
But we haven't updated this yet, so maybe just leave that all those bullet points, all have to be updated in the firm report, which will take about 2 minutes. There.
Yeah, all this still needs to be done or looked at. Yeah, I'll follow up with that. I did ask him for something else, but we'll follow up with that. We did not have. Okay. For food security, I looked at the city council, they have like a page on food security. And then they have a map, an interactive map. So I just took that from the map. And, changed most of it. And that's what it says.
What is the 63 in reference to?
Or I don't know if we still want to keep it.
63. It might be.
It was from before and we have to check if we still want it. Noted it. So if you look at the footnote, it goes to that page. But I don't know if we're inserting images. Well, are we inserting images into this thing? I thought it was all text.
District, right? City needs to.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't. You're. So I still don't think.
Coalition for the Homeless has now released their updated report, so I'm just beginning to go through that to update that section. And homelessness has increased this year. And the HOPE report, though, is still not out, which is the count in January, which makes me think there's a lot to hide.
Mike?
City council budget for the first time this year has an initiative called Feeding Our Communities. It's still unclear what that exactly is going to do and if that helps in addressing the food insecurity. But I'm just flagging as more of an informational. I don't know that we can do anything with that at this time to include it here, but I'm just bringing it up.
City council discretionary funds. And what we're trying to aim at is the agency, the budget that the agencies allocate, which is baseline, because I don't think anything from city council is ever baseline, correct? That's sort of as needed every year. Yeah, so what we're looking at basically when we're talking about the agency budget as opposed to city council discretionary funds.
Okay, so I think, in the end, our section of the district needs statements needs to be reorganized a little bit. In terms of headings and how it's grouped. I mean, generally it is grouped in those different areas, but there's a little repetition there somewhere. And also there will be an introduction, which Susan has started to write it. And it'll be good for her and the ADM to do it because they will have fresher eyes. And it will be done after we're finished with everything, because that's when you do the introduction, after you're done with the whole thing.
So that there are, I was shocked at the huge changes in our community. I was shocked at the increase of people with incomes of between 100,000 and 250,000, which is now, I think, 24%. And we're not losing low-income housing. We're fortunate, low-income people, because we're very fortunate to have a steady stock of affordable housing. We have a lot of NYCHA units and other affordable housing. It's just that people are getting displaced because they're becoming a smaller percentage and their needs are not being met. And the median income is changing because of the incomes between 100 and 250,000, which, you know, definitely impacts zip codes that are targeted for needs.
Final questions?
So I prepared updated technology stats. I don't know where you want to put them. Yeah. Yeah.
Discussed last time, having a paragraph in the introduction to the whole need, because it was mentioned that technology affects almost every area. And so I thought it was going to go like at the end of the introduction to the statement.
Do you want me to just put the numbers I have in the doc then?
Is it more the numbers? I mean, is there?
Yeah.
Okay, we need a little story around it. We need a story. Yes.
The district needs, and the next item is CEC reports or CAB reports. Were there any CAB meetings? Gouverneur had one and, oh, okay.
Start.
Okay, just. Galvin, Gouverneur.
So, skilled nursing facility, Susan self-reported about COVID-19 activity on staff and residents and vaccines to continue to be offered from January to May in the facilities. Dr. G spoke about medical director, Dr. G. He spoke about ambulatory care. He presented an overview of governor's reported 93% voter suppression on IV positive patients in the city of New York, one of the highest that we have in a few years. Here is working with that. 9 out of 4 come back positive, so it's working. And they just gave an update on how they're working with that, how they're teaching the LGBTQIA community, giving them support about this, how to spread the words. So they are having like classes about AIDS and going back to the old days, which is probably because the numbers are so high and they haven't been this high in a very long time. So that's what they're working on. They're gonna start hopefully having meetings in September in person. And yeah, that's the update for now.
Thank you. Delancey Street.
Yeah, so the Holiday Inn at Delancey Street has been had half its floors being used as a shelter for quite a few years now, but they had their very first cab meeting. I don't know why, there's no problems there. And they did say it might end up holding it once a year because there's not a lot of reason. But it was very interesting. I've never been to a cab before for shelter in a hotel, so it's very interesting to learn about. So half the floors are shelter. They are adult women. It is all adult women. The majority of them are working, and the DHS has a goal, which they do meet, of placing about 60% per year in permanent housing. What was more interesting is the rules they have there. So they're not allowed to cook in their rooms at all. They're delivered meals, but they're not allowed to cook. The rooms are shared. They cannot have any guests. There's no common area. There's no place for them to be other than in their room, and they can't have anyone in there with them. So it just seemed really difficult. And that's about it. They're charging the city. I mean, if people aren't paying. Oh. That's not, but I think the fact that half the hotel is still private guests is kind of proof that there are not problems, cause it all about these women who are working all day. There was some incidents right around the corner on Delancey, and people immediately, I started getting calls from elected official offices and others. People immediately assumed it was shelter guests that were the problem. And it was absolutely not true. First of all, it was around men using drugs. And these are women who are not people who are using drugs. So it was important to make clear that people shouldn't be jumping to those conclusions.
Okay, thank you. Eric, the Downtown Presbyterian Hospital.
Have their meeting July 18th. So I guess September, of course.
Sorry, going back to the need for like rehab and nursing, I'm wondering if Groton could ask if there's a waiting list at Gouverneur. If there's a waiting list for those beds, that means that there is an unmet need. And I don't know if Presbyterian has beds like that. Do you know? Yeah, I'm not aware of any, but if they do, it'd be interesting to find out if there's a waiting list. If there's a waiting list, there's not enough beds.
Waiting list on long-term.
Final vote.
Okay, Maylee, Larry Fenn here, Eric Diaz, Taisha Fields, Naima Fafana,
Here.
Deborah Glass, Anna Kakar, Robin Oliveras, Ramya Rao, absent, and Johnny Rivera, Arnett Scott, absent, Carmen Perez, absent.